All right. And I'm going to keep my screen this way. It's hard for my computer, and I apologize, everyone, if I do the full presentation mode with slides and Zoom, so just bear with me. And we don't have a ton of slides anyways. This is more just to sort of guide us when we get started. But welcome, everyone, for joining us tonight. It's interesting. I feel like there's so many virtual events happening. It's been like hard to keep up with everything. I've had a virtual event every night this week. So I was telling my partner, John, that even though we are social distancing, I feel like social life is picking back up again in an odd space. So thanks for just taking the time out of your evening to spend this hour with us. We know you're busy, you have a lot going on, and just the fact that you were able to take an hour to be with us, we're all very grateful. My name is Kristina Shelton. I am located in Green Bay, and I am running for the 90th Assembly District in Wisconsin. And tonight's virtual event is called Progressive Politics, Win the Assembly, Win for Wisconsin. So tonight is meant to be a really candid and honest, engaging conversation about how some of the women running for assembly districts around the state are managing campaigns traditionally and also non-traditionally with the COVID-19 pandemic. We're going to also talk a little bit about some key strategies for centering equity and inclusion in Wisconsin. So we have some different topics that we're going to get into. Equity and inclusion are going to be sort of wrapped in and intersectional through those topics. So we'll kind of weave that in. And certainly you're welcome to engage with us as well. As I was saying, we have a small enough group tonight that I think we can kind of open the floor for questions. And I'll talk about the chat box as well. We're also going to talk a little bit about LGBTQ issues. And before we get into that chat space and that discussion space, I will give everyone who is a guest this evening, and all of their names are on this slide, an opportunity to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about why they're running and some of the key issues. And then we also decided to do this as a round robin style. So as instead of it being a presentation, each of us came up with a question for the group to talk about. And then we'll sort of engage in a dialogue. So hopefully this will not be death by PowerPoint, which everyone's tired of PowerPoint, I think. Before I turn it over to our guests and let everyone introduce themselves, just a few quick things. Probably everyone is zoomed out because this is how we live our lives now, but in case you are unfamiliar or this is your first timer or just getting used to it, everyone has been muted. It helps to just cut down on background noise and feedback. You are welcome to use the chat window to text comments during the session. You can also raise your hand. That's also fine as well. So if you have a question, and if all of the guests as well could let me know if I miss a chat or a question, just we can keep it casual and interrupt ourselves. I will be recording this. This is being recorded and I will put it on YouTube, and I will share the video link with everyone within 1 to 2 days, which is great because then if people couldn't join us tonight, then they will be able to hear about our conversation. And then last but not least, if something happens, if your cat jumps on you or your child has a meltdown or a lamp falls over, I don't know, just know that we are all learning together. It's totally fine. We all make mistakes. If you get popped out of Zoom or something terrible happens, don't stress out. If you can get back, great. If not, it's okay. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to each of our guests tonight who are going to just spend about 2 minutes talking about who they are, why they're running, and some of their key issues. So we'll have each person share, and then we'll turn it to that round robin style of discussion. So with that, I'll turn it over to our first guest, Jessica Katzenmeyer.
Hey everyone. First off, I'm excited to do this tonight. It's awesome that one of the great things about doing a virtual event is that all 5 of us here on this panel, we're all in different parts of the state, and we can all kind of show that we're coming together and working together in doing something like this, and I think that's pretty cool. So I'm Jessica Katzenmeyer. I'm a second ever transgender female to run for assembly, and I'm pretty excited and honored about that. And my district is District 15, which is pretty much about 75% of West Dallas. So if you've ever been to a Wisconsin State Fair, it's just to the south of that. And then we go all the way out to New Berlin. So we got a good chunk in New Berlin and the northern half of that. And the reasons why I'm running, there's 2 key reasons. Number 1 is I've always had a passion to want to help and serve people. I've always had that. I'm that type of person. I'll run to the store for you. I'll take you to a doctor's appointment, whatever, even lend you some money for gas. Reason number two is a little bit more comprehensive, but last summer, I had nearly died from a staph infection that got in my lungs. I remember, the last thing I remembered, I was at my friend's place that night, and I collapsed on her floor, and I couldn't breathe. I said, call 911. I need to go to the hospital. I wake up 3 days later at St. Luke's Hospital, which is on the south side of Milwaukee. And when I woke up, I found out that I nearly died from the staph infection that got in my lungs. And then the other thing is, you know, I'm just happy to be alive, you know. And so I was in the hospital for about a week. And once I got out, I got the bill, and my bill was $80,000. Thank God I have health insurance. Thank God that I was able to find affordable care under the Affordable Care Act. And if I didn't have that, most people with $80,000 or with that type of bill, they'd probably be filing for bankruptcy or being in a lot of debt. And nobody should have to ever worry about being in the debt to save their lives. Or even like say if somebody passed out in front of me, like they should never have to worry. If I call an ambulance today, is that person going to be financially burdened because of that? And that's why I'm running, because we need to fix the healthcare system here in Wisconsin. So that's kind of a big story, shortened version. At least I tried.
Oh, Jess, that was great. And we'll definitely hear more about your story and some of those key issues when we get into the discussion too. Awesome. So next up, I'll introduce Emily Siegrist. She is running in the Assembly District 24.
Hey everyone, how are you? Okay, my laptop just is great. So a little bit about me. This is my second time running. I ran in 2018. I'm a military vet. I served in the Army National Guard right after 9/11, and that kind of led me into my medical career. I was a medic. And then I became a registered nurse and then eventually a nurse practitioner. And so I've been in the healthcare system for about almost half my life, so which is pretty depressing. But I've done a lot of like emergency care, ICU, primary care, urgent care. So I've got a wide range of healthcare experience. I have two kids, a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so homeschooling has been quite an adventure. And then right now I'm teaching nursing students full time, which I really enjoy and love. And I jumped into this race after I realized that my representative wasn't really representing the values that I have. And, you know, in 2018 was kind of a big year. 2016, you know, after Trump won, and then 2017, some of us are Emerge alums or in the Emerge program. And I joined Emerge in 2017, and that kind of, you know, I wanted to do something more, but I wasn't really sure what that was going to be. It wasn't really necessary to run, but kind of fell into that. And besides not winning, I had a great time, you know, learning about my constituents. And I kind of knew I'd probably run again. The question was just like the maps that we have. And I didn't really want to wait a couple of years and then run with new maps and get the same. And I was just like, I'm going to run again. So here I am trying to figure out how we're going to get our nomination signatures, and hoping that, you know, like we're all going to pull off some upsets in 2020 in November, which is this year, obviously. I've just been living in 2019. So I'm excited to be a part of this and to be with you. And yeah, let's do it.
Thanks, Emily. All right, Lee, you're next. I love this picture of you, girl.
So if ever there was a picture that the Republicans should steal for literature against me, there you go. It's right there. I'm owning it. So my name is Lee Snodgrass. I am here in the Fox Valley, primarily Appleton, where I live. The 57th Assembly District is Appleton and Menasha. So for people not familiar with this part, I always say about 30 minutes south of Green Bay. So Kristina knows that. I was actually a candidate in 2018. I ran against Roger Roth, the Senate president, in the 19th Senate District. I was a typical story. You guys know it takes an average of 6 times to ask a woman to run before she will. I think I said yes on the 5th time. I kept assuming, there was somebody else who really could do this or should do this. Like Emily, I learned a lot. I always tell people that running for office is like going and getting your master's degree in 6 months' time. You really have to become not necessarily an expert on many issues, but you have to be conversant on so many issues facing people in the state. And you really, if you do it right, to be a good legislator, you need to understand the issues so that you can form good policy positions on them. So I loved it. I absolutely loved it. My biggest heartbreak in losing was that at the doors, I heard so many stories of people who really needed help, whether they were healthcare stories or stories about teachers who, were taking second jobs to afford supplies for their classroom, or people who were facing domestic violence. And losing, then I did not have a path to help them. I remember I was at an Evers feedback event shortly after the election, and I ran into Senator Jeff Smith, and we were kind of debriefing, and he said, the greatest thing now is I can help those people. When people say they have a problem, I can point to somebody and say, I have somebody who can call you. I have somebody who can fix this. And that's really the desire and the reason I ran in the first place was that, I was a single mom. I still am technically for 10 years. And I was making difficult choices between, whether or not I could afford new tires for my car, or whether or not I was going to have that diagnostic mammogram for a routine mammogram that had something else that they wanted to look closely at. I was literally weighing decisions that impacted my health care that were like $800, like, which one of these things can I afford? And that's not really how people should live. So I wear many hats, as you can see in the thing, and I love being a candidate, and I really hope I have the honor of representing people in Wisconsin. Thanks.
Awesome, Lee, thank you. And I'm surprised they haven't stolen this picture yet. All right, Emily, you're up next.
All right. Well, they've already stolen this picture of mine and used it to call me a socialist. So yay, I must be doing something right if I'm scaring the Republicans. My name's Emily Voigt, and I'm a candidate for Assembly District 3. I'm a single mom too, seems to be kind of a trend. I have 3 wonderful children. My daughter's a senior in high school, and my sons are 11 and 9. And both my sons are autistic. So part of what I'm going to be talking about tonight is special education, because that's very near and dear to my heart. I have a background in marketing and in education. I have my teaching degree in broad field social science. So history, political science. I student taught civics and US history. And I got to see a lot firsthand about the education system. There's many reasons why I'm running. Honestly, I've lived in my district for 12 years, and it's very gerrymandered red. Alot was the incumbent for a long time, and then now it's Ron Tussler. And when I had issues with Badger Care, I went to Ron and told him what was going on with my son, that Badger Care was trying to deny my son his very much needed therapy. And without trying to get too much into it, because I know many people have different ideas of how we should be talking about autism, including autistic adults, and in trying to be cognizant and of their preference on how to address the sensitive verbiage. I am going to use teacher language, which puts person first, just so you know, because that's how and as a parent, that's how we're taught to speak about our children. Anyways, my son is severely autistic, and Ron was like, there's nothing we can do. We know this is an issue, and he wouldn't help. And I went to Amanda Stuck, and she's like, yeah, there's something that can be done. So the reason why I am running is because we need to help everyone, regardless of where they fall on the political spectrum. If there's something that you can do to help those that are hurting, you should. It shouldn't be an issue. The fact that I met Bernie Sanders should have nothing to do with my representative helping me or not. So, sorry, I'll get off my soapbox about that. But yeah, that's the biggest reason why I'm running, is to help people, because everyone deserves help. Healthcare is a human right. So there we go.
Hey, Kristina, can I just jump in and say that So people don't think I'm running against the lovely Amanda Stuck, who Emily referenced. Amanda, who currently is the
sorry.
57th, yeah, she's the current 57th Assembly District representative. She's running for the 8th Congressional District for Congress, so that leaves her seat open. So I'm not running against Amanda. I love Amanda. She asked me to run for the seat. I'm very happy to do so.
Awesome. Thanks, Lee. Emily, anything else?
Oh,
Oh, you're on mute. We can't hear you. I'm gonna unmute you. Go ahead.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
All right. First of all, I apologize, and I hate to be picky like this, but my last name is actually Voigt.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I actually, that was how we felt it when we came from Germany, but, you know, Americanizing.
So an H before the G?
I'm a big history buff. So, yeah, it's Voigt. Sorry, like I said, I'm a big history buff. I love history.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
No, I
about
don't really
that.
have much more to add. Obviously, if anyone has, it's okay. It happens.
All
That's
right.
about it. That's all I have to add.
I was going to say I'm a history buff too, so.
All right, so I'll go last and then we'll turn it over to the discussion section. So you all heard from me earlier. My name's Kristina. I, again, am up in the Green Bay area of Wisconsin. I'm in the 90th Assembly District. So I am someone who was never involved in politics. I don't come from a political family. In fact, I think the first time my parents ever voted was for Obama in his first election. And so honestly, it just wasn't on my radar because I just was never exposed to it. But my time as a physical education and health education teacher in the public school system, I started teaching in the Philadelphia public school system when I was 22 years old. And through that experience of being in public ed and moving around the country at the time, my husband and I were putting ourselves through school and raising 2 children. And just similar to what you all have shared as well, just really understanding and seeing with clarity how so many of our issues were systemic and really where they needed to be tackled. There was only so much I could do for my students in Philadelphia when I would talk about at the time the food pyramid, right? I mean, but these were students that there wasn't a grocery store for 5 miles, right? They were coming in with all of the standard traumas that we think of, you know, kids who are under-resourced, you know, living in poverty, hungry, living in communities without support systems and social structures. And it was really impactful for me. So a few years ago, there was an opening in the Green Bay Area Public School Board, and there was an opportunity for community to write a letter to be appointed for that position. And I thought, you know, I'm going to just write a letter, see if I get in. And I was selected, and I subsequently ran an election last spring that I won in April of 2019. So for the past year and a half, I've been serving on the Green Bay School Board, and it has been one of the most exciting, exhilarating, and exhausting but fulfilling experiences of my life to become part of a political world where to your point, I can't remember which of my lovely allies tonight said it, but to understand where I can help and to be able to solve people's problems, right? And to be able to start to pull people together in the community to really be able to make a difference. And so I was not thinking about running for other political office at all. I was actually really excited to be not doing that this year, but there was an opportunity here in our assembly district that I couldn't turn down. In the fall, our current representative was investigated, and then he actually admitted to sexually harassing a staffer. And it was really difficult for our community because of that behavior, he had been pulled and is pulled from the Democratic Assembly caucus and committee work. And as a voter, as someone that's engaged in community organizing and political engagement, I really felt like the voters in our district deserved a choice. Talked to a lot of people in our community and just decided that I wanted to make a run for the seat because one, I think that's democracy. It's democracy in action to give people a choice. We believe in representation in Madison. And we really felt like if our current rep wasn't doing caucus and participating in caucus committee work, there really was a limit to how much he was able to represent us. But aside from that too, I also am really, our platform is very progressive and very bold. Obviously, public education will always be really close to my heart and something that I continue to fight for, but public health, the environment, all of these key pieces are things that we know we're going to be talking a little bit tonight. And I will also, and I'll stop talking, but I also want to say that I'm wearing socks that say identify as a badass because, because in my life, I really believe in like being myself. And I think when we can be ourselves, that's when we truly shine. And this picture is of me DJing. I love music. And I got a chance to DJ at the YWCA Gala in January at the Hotel Northland. And I'm wearing a vintage dress and I'm DJing. And this was like me living my best life. So there was a glass of wine to the side of the DJ booth that I cropped out, but now I'm admitting to you that it was there the whole time. So anyways, we'll talk more about some of my other ideas in a bit, but I'm going to turn it over to the group so we can get into our discussion topic. So anybody want to share or ask anything? Let me pull up the chat box. Is there anything worth pausing and discussing? Jess? I said I saw your hand.
Oh, my roommate just walked in.
Emily says, where did you get the socks? I don't know where I got. Oh, I got the socks from a friend of mine, Emily. She ordered them and sent them to me. I'll find out. But they're great. They're great socks. I actually just thought to myself, could I pull my foot up and show you in the screen? Then I was like, that's not possible. All right, so let's turn to our conversation. I'm going to start with Jess. So Jess, your topic isn't around conversion therapy. So why don't you throw that out to the group? We'll talk and then engage.
Okay. Hey, everyone. So I decided to pick conversion therapy as a topic. It's LGBT rights. It's kind of my forte. I'm an LGBTQ rights activist. I've done work before and traveled to even small towns in Wisconsin for advocating for LGBTQ rights. And one of the things that I had recently been working on with like a big conglomerate group of people is banning conversion therapy at the local levels. Because we know that the legislative makeup is conservative, it's going to be hard to pass something like conversion therapy through the legislature. And so a bunch of us decided to get together and work on passing it at local levels, because we feel like if we pass it at the local levels, it's going to send a message to the state. So I kind of want to pose a question to you all tonight is, how can we support conversion therapy in these communities that do not have it passed yet, especially in these conservative communities, like maybe places like Waukesha or other areas where where maybe it might have a harder time passing. And what's your thoughts on conversion therapy? Because for me, it's a cruel practice. It really targets kids and children under 18 years old. And even in some of the extreme cases of these therapists trying to convert these kids from being gay, bisexual, lesbian, transgender, they even used electroshock therapy. And if I was a parent, I don't think I could ever put a kid through that. Like, why? Why would you do that? So I just kind of want to open it up and see what other people are saying. And yeah, let's just do that.
So we have, I think, Alderperson Denise Fenton from Appleton on the call, and she is instrumental in getting it passed in Appleton. Maybe, Denise, do you have any comments?
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and chime in.
Unmuted myself. Hi, I was just going to listen, but then this topic came up. So, yes, in Appleton, I sit on the Board of Health as well within the Common Council, and the resolution to ban conversion therapy was up for quite a while, numerous public hearings. Honestly, there were two ways that we got this passed in Appleton. The first way was focusing on the science and presenting all of the medical, psychological, psychiatric associations presenting all of their views that, you know, this is wrong, it doesn't work. And then truly what really passed this was the brave people who got up at 6 in the morning. Board of Health meets at 7 a.m. in Appleton. Got up at 6 in the morning, came down to City Hall, risked harassment to speak on this. And then we had over 60 people at the council meeting when this was up for public testimony. And the combination of that, appealing to people from the scientific basis, and then our wonderful medical consultant on the Board of Health, her testimony is what got this passed in Appleton. Now, we don't have any penalties in Appleton. What we do is if it's reported, we report the activity to the licensing board of the various professions. But I was honestly surprised. It passed Board of Health unanimously and Common Council almost unanimously.
It was
That's
a great
awesome.
moment. Thanks for sharing, Denise.
That's
Sure.
awesome. I gotta say, so the night that the conversion therapy bill was passed at Shorewood, I had given a pretty emotional testimony that night. And I remember, like, the board, after I testified, the board passed it unanimously. And I could have just helped just to sit down and just cry. I'm like, this is pretty awesome. And I just saw, like, Erica saying something about the cities that's passed it. She said Appleton, Eau Claire, Madison, Milwaukee, Racine, Shorewood. And there's actually 10 cities that have some sort of conversion therapy ban law in Wisconsin on the books right now, including Superior. Let me look at my notes here. So I have Milwaukee, Madison, Eau Claire, Cudahy, Shorewood, Racine, Sheboygan, Superior, and Glendale. And Appleton's the most recent one that passed the law back in January. And then overall on the state side of things, there's 20 states that have banned conversion therapy, starting with New Jersey back in 2013. So it's been introduced here in the Wisconsin legislature, and it kind of died throughout the legislative process and from the 2019 to 2020 session. But I would hope that we could get something done at the state level, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard work.
Jess, this is, can I ask you a question? And if you don't know, we can open up to the floor, but I'm going to assume that you do. What I had heard too was that we don't really fully know the scope of the issue in Wisconsin because the data is just all over the place and it's not there. And so often this is happening and it's not being reported at all. Mm-hmm. So can you speak to that? And like, and Bailey's raising her hand too. Sure. Bailey, you want to unmute yourself?
Sure, thank you. A lot of the problem with conversion therapy is that even for states that have supposedly banned it, it's banned within the state. What a lot of parents will do, and this is disgusting, they will go to the extent of paying someone to fake kidnap their child and bring them to the Atlantic in somewhere like Haiti or somewhere in that area. So it's technically out of the United States to a facility where conversion therapy is not banned. Mm-hmm. And that's where a lot of the gross stuff like the electrocution is actually happening. In the United States, it's more so just a more intense Bible school type thing where there are still physical punishments, but it is more based on preaching the book. And that's why it's harder to crack down on here. So in Wisconsin, it doesn't look like the tasing and whatnot so much, but it's the parents that actually get their kids shipped out of America where you get that. So that it's a two-pronged problem with conversion therapy.
Right. And one of the reasons why it's important to me is I would never want to see a kid be put through that. You know, why should a kid be put through that? They're going to be scared. They're going to think that something's wrong with them. This increases the suicide rate and depression amongst many other issues that arises from conversion therapy. And it's just a horrible, horrible practice and should never be done in the state of Wisconsin or in the US for that matter. It's terrible. And I think part of the other problem where statistics may not be accurate is, since a lot of this is dealing with children, I saw a statistic that of roughly 171,000 Wisconsinites identify in the LGBTQ spectrum. And that doesn't include children, because many children are afraid to come out to their parents for reasons like this. And I think that's a key issue right there. Like, they're too afraid because they don't know if they're going to get disowned or kicked out of their houses, or who knows what could happen. And that's why my heart really speaks to that, because that's really scary if you're, say, you're a 12-year-old child and your parents going to disown you just because you say, hey, I think I'm gay. I think I like boys, and there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you like, that's what you like.
And Amanda Stepp she had a bill that it never went anywhere. Where does that stand, Lee? Can you speak to that? Because I know she did something.
Yeah, so the bill was actually introduced by Senator Tim Carpenter in the state Senate. He's an out gay man in the state Senate. And then several assembly representatives also signed on to it. Amanda was one of them. The problem right now, and the problem that we'll all have to face, unless there's some sort of miracle, is that even if we have great bills and great ideas, they're not being brought to the floor, much less discussed. So I have been asked by people who kind of know how it works too, who've said, what are you going to do? What are you actually going to do? I know what you believe in and I know your ideas, but what are you going to do when they don't let any of these things even get a hearing on the floor? And my answer to that, and I think is something that we're probably all very committed to, is if you're going to keep shutting us down, it doesn't mean we're going to shut up. It means we're going to continue to shine a spotlight on what you're not doing, who you're not representing, who's being left behind. And we're going to make it really uncomfortable for you to do the wrong thing. So we can still have voices, we can still work hard, we can still push, we can still try to find compromises where it makes sense. But the conversion therapy ban is one of those. Maybe a new class of people who aren't quite as jaded or who are asking for forgiveness instead of permission might get some things done.
But that's sorry, Jess, go ahead.
And that's one of the reasons why is that people like all of us are running, is so that we can make a difference in the assembly and we can start flipping some of the seats, especially what we just saw with the spring election mess that happened and what they did. I mean, who knows what's going to happen in November if COVID-19 is still going to be going on, which I suspect it probably is by all reports, but we don't know. And then, yeah, I agree that we just need to keep fighting and call them out and let people know that this is what's going on in the assembly. And some of it, from what I've seen, has been disgusting too. And I'll see like a perfectly good bill being introduced, and then they'll introduce kind of a choppy bill to kill the perfectly good bill. And we saw that a lot with the sexual assault kit cases, or the assault kit bills that was in January that was going on. They had a perfectly good bill that was introduced, and my opponent actually promised the hearing on it. Never happened. They introduced the choppy bill, and then they got a hearing 6 days later. I showed up and testified, which is where my picture is from, if you saw from earlier. And against it because it was just a horrible bill, and it was designed to kill the perfectly good bill. And I could sort of see this trend continuing on if Republicans control the assembly. So.
But it speaks to, though, to your point, Lee, as well, is that's the important piece of continuing to organize communities, right? As electeds or candidates or in whatever hat we're serving, it's what you can do in that lane, but what you do in that lane isn't the only lane. And that's where we leverage the power of our other community organizers and our community voices that can get out and do things that we can't necessarily do in the assembly, because we know, right, that a lot of these issues we have the public on our side, like public opinion generally for what.
Look at fair maps, look at cannabis legalization.
Right.
So So really, I mean, people like, you know, Emily mentioned that she's on the recently elected to the county board. Denise is on Appleton City Council. Christina, you're in school board.
Kristen
People who
Kaiser is on
hold-
school board. Yeah.
Yeah, people who hold
Yeah.
local offices, when you can pass something in a community and show that that's what that community values and you represent that community, it's really hard at a state level to ignore that. I mean, they're trying, but the more people who speak up locally and say, hey, this is what we believe in and we would support state legislation for this, the better it's going to be and the easier it's going to be for us. So those things are really important.
And that's why I think it's amazing to see like communities like Sheboygan, Superior on the list. You know, communities that you know, maybe we might have a harder time getting it through, but they did it. So why can't Wisconsin do it? What the people
Bailey,
want.
Bailey's been
saying.
raising her hand.
Who?
Bailey's been raising her hand. Sorry,
Okay.
Chris. Sorry, Jess.
I just have a quick question. Can I get all 5 candidates to commit now? If there is a bill to ban conversion therapy, you will sign it.
Oh yes,
Of
most
course.
definitely.
Of
Yeah.
course.
I
Is that
think
all 5?
Yes.
I don't know where
Thank
Emily
you.
Siegrist went, but
yes, I will definitely make a priority of signing that and introducing that. I saw in my statistics here too that with the bill that Tim Carpenter introduced, there's 45 co-sponsors, including 2 Republicans, and which Republicans is one of the few openly gay legislatures that's serving right now, which is Novak. And yeah, I mean, we can get it done, but you know, that's what the people want. So we just all need to continue to organize, speak up, and call people out. They're not doing what we want to be done.
yeah. All right, I'm gonna actually have us pivot to the next topic because, of course, we always have more topics than what we can possibly get through. But I do want to get to Emily Voigt's topic, which is special education, because especially with COVID-19 and with distance learning happening, and I know this is a big, important, significant topic for not only teachers and families. So Emily, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can talk through that if you want and throw your question out to the group.
Sure. So my question is, what do we think we can have the Assembly do to support parents and educators of children with special needs during this time especially? I personally am having a very hard time homeschooling my children. In fact, one thing I didn't really mention is actually all 3 of my children have IEPs. My eldest has an EBD IEP, my middle one for his autism, and then obviously my youngest with his severe autism. So we're struggling at home, and I don't know, I'm trying to find the answer myself. So I'll open it up to any comments or questions that you have about this.
Emily, I'll tell you what, I actually connected to someone at the Green Bay Public Schools the other day about this because this was a board topic when we were approving measures for distance learning. And these aren't necessarily, sorry if you can hear my cat, she's meowing next to me. What she really said to me was, it was 3 key pieces. The first thing she said was, listen, there is inconsistency and lack of clarity of messaging. She said one day, and this is DPI, right? But we're all connected. None of these issues are siloed. She said it's just been increasingly and incredibly frustrating for her and her staff, and then for the families as well, because one day it's this and then it shifted to this. And she said, as we think about this as the long term, we need to get our house in order to make sure everybody knows exactly what the message is and what the measures are that they need to be carrying out. She also too talked about that school districts need additional money for home-based materials to support the learning of students and for families, but also for staff. So to connect with those materials and to get to the materials into the homes. And then the last thing she said too was that they just really want to concentrate on learning. She was like, we know what we're doing. We're the experts. This is difficult for us. And she said, is there a way that we can not be bogged down by sort of the system, right? to be able to sort of get our feet underneath us to provide services for kids. She said, we want to be accountable, but how can we do that in a way that's consistent to what they have the capacity to do? And even though those aren't necessarily things that like we as assembly reps or candidates could do, I think it really helped me to understand the issues that they're facing. Because when you have context about what people are dealing with, I think it then helps you to figure out, okay, how do we solve this for them?
Mm-hmm.
Emily, did you know Shannon Null when she was here?
No. Oh,
Okay.
Shannon, no. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I did.
So when I ran for state senate, Shannon Leary Null, who has a son who has autism,
Right.
she was very involved in a local group and connected me with their lobbying arm of the group, and told me how many times they had visited with Roger Roth, and he smiled and took the picture with them, but then went on to not do anything that they had asked. And I've really learned a lot about, you know, I don't know enough about autism and the challenges that people like Emily's family are facing. But what you can do is bring people like Emily's family and Shannon's family to the table and say, what are some ideas and solutions that you have? I think the worst thing a politician or a representative can do is to pretend like they have all the answers. It would be disingenuous if we said that, and remarkable if we did. So bringing together people who have that direct experience and working with them on what they think would work and building legislation from that, I think is really the key. So Emily, I'm so glad that you're running, and I hope you get that jerk out of there.
Me too. Yeah, I think that's because I remember when maybe a separate discussion for another time, but Mike Gallagher held a big thing about autism, and I asked him a very pointed question about healthcare and paying for services, because we know that early intervention for all children, it doesn't matter whether they have a disability or not, is key. And I could not pin him down to get an answer out of him at all. So it's a very frustrating position to be in, because I appreciate what the DPI was saying to you, Kristina. Honestly, the things I've been working on the most with my youngest is actually not education-based at all. It's about self-care. It's about him communicating his needs. And it's not even because he's so accustomed to school being the place where he does his work and home being the place where he's allowed to be him more so than anything else, you know, that it's very hard to get him to sit down at the kitchen table and do any schoolwork at all. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that. Maybe I sound like I'm failing. But I haven't been able to get any schoolwork out of him. We've been working on other things. So,
Emily, do you feel like there has been, at least on your end, and I know it's your experience, but do you feel like has been consistency from your children's educators and teachers on what's happening as this is all unfolded?
Yeah, they're wonderful. I will never say a bad word about the school that my children go to. I love Johnston. I'm in Appleton, so I should have probably said that as well. The district that I'm in, I'm on the south side of Appleton, close to Kimberly, Darboy area. And our school is amazing, and the teachers are so supportive, and I can call and I can ask any questions, and they understand what we're going through. So at least they're understanding, and it's not going to be detrimental to the kids' grades or anything like that. So they know, I think they're struggling as much as we are because they love these kids. You don't get involved in special education. You don't become a teacher unless you love children and want to see them succeed. So, yeah, they're doing the best they can do, and we're doing the best that we can do. And I'm realizing how dark it's getting in here. I'm gonna mute myself and turn on a light.
I was going to say something. So one of my kind of growing themes in my campaign has been a representative government's just that, it's a representative government, and we need to bring that back. And I've kind of made a commitment. If I don't know anything about an issue, I find people who does know stuff about the issue, and I go to talk to them, and I ask them, hey, how's the best way we can handle this? What's the best type of legislation that we can introduce that will help you out? And I think that's what our job is as representatives of the assembly.
Yeah, to Lee's point, it's the people closest to the issue, the families and the teachers, and they need to be closest to the decision making.
Right, because I asked that in before, and the assembly reps that are on the committee, they'll flat out ask the people who authored the bill, have you talked to anybody in this community that's going to affect? And I've heard no several times. It's like, then what are you doing then? Is this going to affect the whole community? And you haven't even talked to anybody in the community about this? This upsets me so much. So
It's kind of like women's health panels with all men.
exactly.
Sorry.
Good point. Good point. Yes.
So I think with that, we're gonna shift to Emily, because Emily Siegrist, we haven't heard from you too much. So I think that's a perfect segue into healthcare.
Yes.
So Emily, you want to throw out your topic about healthcare? Is there anything specific you wanted us to chat about?
Well, not really. I was thinking about the question I was going to propose, and it's a very vague question, but I think we all agree that as COVID-19 has hit our country, it's really shown us how we are not adequate in our system. And so, of course, my question was just like, how do we as a state view our healthcare? And, I think one thing that has repeatedly popped up is the fact that our healthcare is tied into our jobs. And as we've hit the over 20 million mark of individuals who are unemployed currently at the federal level, what is exactly happening, and what's going to entail once we get this thing kind of more figured out for individuals who have had to be hospitalized because of COVID, and what their medical bills will be. We heard from Jessica when she was hospitalized for her respiratory issue. And so therefore, there could be many other individuals like Jessica who had COVID and ended up in the ICU. My spouse, he has about 20 COVID patients in the ICU at St. Luke's. And so, this is not a very cheap diagnosis. They're having problems extubating these patients and keeping them extubated just because they haven't seen this type of issue before. So my question to everyone is just like, what is our plan for where we go from here?
By the
And
way,
you cannot say single payer system. We got to figure out how we're going to get to that point.
by the way, Emily and I have a interesting connection here too, because her spouse was actually my doctor when I was in the ICU. So
Wow.
that helped save my life.
Well, Emily, you remember in the last candidate season, everybody complains about Democrats not being clear on messaging. Republicans have very clear messaging, and the Democrats tend to be all over the place. From the top down, from Tammy Baldwin to Governor Evers to everybody running for a statewide office, and all of the assembly candidates and the state senate candidates, we were all talking about healthcare. And I think we have to continue to beat that drum, especially when Donald Trump is constantly talking about taking it away. And we're in the middle of I'm going to swear, damn health crisis. So at a state level, kind of to the point where Denise was talking about, getting the conversion ban passed by going to what the science says, I believe that the first incremental steps in improving our healthcare is to go to the finances of it. The bottom line is that most Republicans or most people in opposition to this don't understand the ultimate cost savings. And if we can find ways to be very explicit and clear on that, I think we have our pathway. I'd love to say that people are compassionate and they love humanity and they care about those values, but sadly, sometimes it's starting at the wallet that I think is where you find that kind of close to common ground where you can move something forward.
Can I add with healthcare? I think a concept to healthcare is adding in the mental healthcare side of it as well too, which is not talked a lot about with candidates at the assembly level. And it is so key, especially in a time like right now, where we're all doing the social distancing. We can't see our friends face to face. And I can tell you, it's taken a toll on me too. I mean, I'm sure everybody, I was hugging people. And I love seeing my therapist. I've seen a therapist now for 9 months. And it's just nice to have that person to talk to, is to help, work through your issues. And Yeah, mental health care is a very important part of expanding healthcare access to me.
I think it's sad that the only time that they seem to care about healthcare or mental health care is when we start to talk about gun violence prevention. They shift the conversation from common sense legislation and gun violence prevention to mental health services, which is great. It is part of it. I'm glad we're talking about it. We need to address it, but that is the only time that they're willing to have those conversations.
Mhm.
Yes, I mean, mental health care can help with that, but we need to have more gun legislation to prevent people from getting these weapons that's causing the gun violence. I mean, it's just like you said, it's common sense.
May I add something? One of the things, at least that I'm planning on pushing for, is to take the Medicaid expansion money to provide more better care. I know that's not universal health care, that's not Medicare for all, but if we're talking about incremental steps, that's something I think I shouldn't speak for everyone, but the Democrats should be committed to, is taking that money. I don't know about the rest of you on this, but I've been on Badger Care since I got divorced. As a single mom with kids with disabilities, I've not been able to hold a full-time job because of my schedule, because of their schedule, because of therapy, because of all of these things. So I work part-time, and then I'm, a full-time mom. And so Badger Care has been a lifesaver to us. And I wish more people would be that are right on that cusp are able to qualify, because one year, and this was when I was first a newlywed, I had my daughter at 18 and I got married shortly after. And my now ex-husband and I were both working. I was in school full-time for my degree in college, and we went to apply for Badger Care, reapply. And what happened was that I made $100 too much a year, $100 a year too much, and they were going to kick us off. And my worker was so nice, and she's like, I'll just fudge it a little so that, sorry, my dog climbed up in my lap. She's like, I'll just fudge it a little so that you can get your Badger Care, because it's nothing. It's either nothing, or there's sometimes a small increment where you can pay a little to continue having it, or you get it. So we need to find another system to gradually get people off of Badger Care. But because healthcare is tied to employment, that's really tough when you're in a position like me where, you work part-time, your job doesn't offer benefits, and you have children. What are we supposed to do? I'm sorry, I really talked for way longer than I should have. I apologize. But
Well,
I'm so glad you shared that.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, like in my district on the West Allis side of things, the mean income of West Allis is under $40,000. There's a lot of people I know who are working 2 to 3 part-time jobs just to make ends meet. And how are they going to get insurance? They need to have access to insurance so that they can help support their families when they have healthcare issues that arise. I mean, I think that it's important as a state, we should take care of our own, right? I mean, a healthy state is a strong state. Am I right? I mean, I think that's something we could all agree on.
Well, and with a pandemic like this, the last thing we want is to have people be nervous about their health and then lose their health care as they lose their employment, right? Or not have health care at all, or see that lack of health care, compounded by other aspects of their life. Like if they're, we're seeing the racial disparities coming out of Milwaukee, right, around the country, of how this is impacting the most marginalized communities. So I think it just brings to light the things that we already know existed, but how do we use this? I think when I think about this, like, how do we leverage, this isn't an opportunity, but if we have to use this as an opportunity, how do we leverage this time to really organize and push for the big ideas that we know that we need that are going to solve these issues, right? Because like we can put tiny stopgaps into the healthcare system, but at the end of the day, we need something much bigger than that. And I know that's politically almost impossible, but I have to believe in it because we have to keep fighting for it.
Well, Kristina,
I think one thing to talk about is, Republicans like money. And when, I'm sure Lee understands this too, when we were out on the doors doing in 2018, healthcare was also a huge, like the number one issue people were concerned about. So when we talked about expanding Medicaid, you know, we were like, you know, now we know we've lost $1 billion at the state level for not accepting the Medicaid. And
Free
so
money they weren't taking. Yeah.
And so I always say, like, listen, you know how much money it would have saved our state had we accepted that expansion? Because of course, Republicans, that's the only thing they care about. How are we going to pay for this? And I think that's one thing to always keep in mind if we ever get the opportunity to start doing doors, is like, they always want to know, well, your ideas are great, but how are you going to pay?
How are you going to pay?
Yeah.
And so that's, you know, healthcare is really important to many individuals. But it's also making sure that our messaging discusses, like, okay, yes, we have a very utopic idea of having Medicare for all, but this is how we're going to allocate our funds to make sure that this is where we're trending towards.
Right. Yep.
All right, you guys, we're at the top of the hour.
Are we really already?
Yeah, 8 o'clock. Lee, we didn't get to our topics of infrastructure, transportation.
That's okay.
Maybe next month.
That's
we can do
okay.
a
Again,
meeting.
Round two.
I'm going to slide our screen over. We want to thank everyone for jumping on with us again tonight. This was really fun. On the last slide is our contact information. Don't worry about writing all this stuff down. I will email the group. I have all your registration, so I'll email everyone who registered. And if it's okay with our candidates, I'll include all of our candidate information, our email, website, Facebook. And I will also
links as well too.
What'd you say, Jess?
We should probably add in all of our donation links as well too.
Yes, donations, right? Ugh.
Yes, can I get some more information? Because my side is really blank up there too. Do you mind if I give you a little more information before you share it, Kristina?
Oh, yeah, totally. I won't share this until I do the video recording, Emily, so I'll just take the next day and then let me know when it's ready.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will definitely be in touch with you all. I hope that we'll have more virtual gatherings.
One thing, don't forget nomination signatures.
Yes.
If you are in our districts, please help us.
Yes. I mean, this is challenging for all of us because we have social distancing, so we all need help with nomination signatures.
And I'm going to tell you what, trying to walk people through that nomination form remotely is a nightmare. Like how many I've already gotten back that aren't filled out correctly. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So yes, thank you for bringing that up too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're bored and you want something to do, like, we will send you a list of people that you could be responsible for. Like, I mean, it's going to take a team for congressional and Senate and us. Like, congressional, they need about 2,000 signatures. So please help everyone out.
One more thing. Is there any other candidates in the room? I did see Paul McCreary was here. He's a candidate for the 82nd, which is
any other candidates?
A little farther south of me. And I know he's got a challenging primary in his district. And thank you for joining us, Paul.
Yep. And thanks to all the leaders that
conversation.
Hey, you're welcome.
And thanks to congrats to the other candidates that won last week. Cheers.
Yes.
You got through the April election. All right, everybody. Have a good rest of your night. Take care.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.